It's a university program with no textbooks. But boy, did the students read. From Homer's The Iliad to Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, King's FYP program, or Foundation Year program, introduces students to some of the great books of all time.
My name is Molly. I'm in FYP Arts. I think it was really cool how we got an opportunity to explore so many different eras in literature. I wanted something that could help me discover what I wanted to do in the future.
My name is Isaac. I was particularly attracted to FYP because it sort of offered a general foundation of knowledge, like in the name. I was unsure really of what I wanted to do, and I thought that this would really sort of give me an establishing base for any future humanities I wanted to go into, because I knew I didn't want to do math or science. So I thought this was a good start.
My name is Kate. I think that the writing improvement is definitely going to be useful. I think the literary criticism and just learning how to think critically and to analyze things, I think it'll definitely be useful in that way.
Welcome back to This is King's podcast and to our third season where we're exploring all things King's. I'm Pauline Dakin. I teach here in the School of Journalism, Writing and Publishing. This season, we're doing something a bit different. We're focusing on King's various programs of study. This small East Coast university is all about the humanities and journalism. Over the next 6 episodes, we'll meet the directors of each of the programs for conversations about what's being taught and what it means in the larger world. My guest this week is Neil Robertson, the director of the Foundation Year program. He's here in real life in studio. Hi, Neil.
Hello.
Welcome.
Lovely to be here.
So let's start with a little bit about you. Anybody who's been to King's knows Neil Robertson, but we may have folks that haven't been here yet. You have a long history on campus, right?
Yes, I came to King's as an undergraduate, as a student back in the 1980s, and graduated from King's, and then was able to return in the late 1980s and have been here ever since.
Okay, so you know King's.
I certainly know my experience of King's, but of course, in a way, there are many King's with each student that comes here.
Mm-hmm. You are, I think for the second time, the director of FYP.
Yes, I've returned as director of the Foundation Year program, something I love doing. I love the sense in which I get to participate in a collective form of living together in a community of thought and learning and reading and mutual understanding. And for me, that is absolutely delightful.
Mm-hmm. You describe the program, well, I'll get back to that in a minute. Let me ask you, if you were talking to students or their parents, how would you describe FYP to them?
Well, I often use a metaphor from Marshall McLuhan, who was a famous Canadian media theorist, and he has this phrase, nobody knows who discovered water, but we know it wasn't the fish. And people think about that a little bit, and they reflect on the fact that the reason the fish can't discover the water is because they're swimming in it. And in a way, we are swimming in our own assumptions and our own understanding of the world in terms of questions about what is humanity, what is justice, what is politics, what is religion, what is nature, all sorts of things that belong to us as contemporary modern human beings. The Foundation Year program is an opportunity to try to discover that water that we're swimming in by looking at some of the sources of that water, by going back to the ancient world, to the medieval world, to the Renaissance, up into the Age of Reason, to the era of revolutions, and into our contemporary period. So it's an opportunity to reflect on who we are, to allow us to live more thoughtfully in the world that we already inhabit.
You describe FYP as a reading journey, and I want to quote a little bit from you here, from your annual letter to FYP students, and you say, As in any journey, we are called upon to notice what is different, to think new thoughts and imagine other worlds, and in so doing, come to experience our own context differently with greater insight and a sense of possibility. Why do you think this is so important, to notice what's different, to think about and imagine new thoughts in different worlds?
Okay, let me use another metaphor. In the Odyssey, in Homer's Odyssey, there is this figure, Polyphemus, who is this giant cyclops who has one eye in the center of his head. And for Polyphemus, all reality is about force and power. And in a sense, if you look at the surface of things, there's a lot of truth in that view. But what I want to suggest is that when you do a program like King's, we're in a way asking you to grow a second eye, which is that you're seeing the same thing, but now with a new depth. And what depth allows you to do is to see possibilities that aren't available simply on the surface. And crucial to what the Foundation program does is it asks students to think hard thoughts, to think thoughts for themselves, and in doing so, to acquire a kind of confidence in their own minds, which then allows them to find new ways of thinking about things in the world we live in.
What's the impact for those students of doing that? And I know it's hard because they congregate outside my office. I hear them talking about their books and so on.
Yeah, well, I would actually recommend, there's a recent opinion piece in the Globe and Mail on August 30th by Shauna Delansky, who teaches in a similar program to ours. And she makes some beautiful points there about what that kind of work of dealing with difficult texts written in times and places that are not our own, and yet somehow inform or speak to our situation, that allows students to gather the capacity for a kind of deep and reflective thinking. In a way, King's is a kind of antidote, if I can put it that way, to the current explosion of artificial intelligence. Because AI is really an invitation for us to hand our thinking over to an algorithm. And certainly there are lots of good uses of AI. I don't want to question that for a second. But if we're not going to simply be subject to that external thinking, we need to develop capacities within ourselves to think more deeply and originally so that we're not mastered by the tools that we are seeking to use.
It's interesting when you think about our little mini computers that we all have in our back pocket all the time now. Think of what that's done to your ability to remember a phone number or to keep track of what's in your calendar for today without looking at the calendar. There is a real risk of losing cognitive ability, isn't there?
Yeah, so one of the things I say about the Foundation program is it sort of functions at two levels. One level is an opportunity to be exposed to these wonderful texts in a kind of historical development or a complex historical set of interactions and have that kind of insight into our own cultural world. That's one thing. But at another level, it's an apprenticeship. We ask our students to write essays every second week. They are producing a new essay. And the reason for that is that the essay requires deep, concentrated thinking, analyzing something and making a claim about it and finding the evidence within the text to substantiate that claim. And that apprenticeship in what I like to call deep thinking is crucial to our ability to not simply be subject to the world we're in. And so what we, in a way, are saying is there's 8 months here. Put to the side, just for a moment, all of these forces that want to distract you from thinking deeply. And then, you can re-enter that world. But for a moment, there's a special opportunity for young people as they are emerging from high school and entering into university life to engage themselves in that fundamental work, which I think is crucial to being able to inhabit our world, not only personally, but as citizens, as people who are involved in a culture which seems to too easily break into simply asserting opinions rather than trying to think through connections.
The group that you teach, for a number of years now, they have been digital natives. And so they have been very exposed to those opinions that flow in through social media and other online sources. What's the impact of that been on FYP?
Well, I think that there are, of course, both strengths and weaknesses. There are opportunities and costs that are part of any kind of big cultural shift. And so there's at our fingers the resources of, multiple civilizations over millennia of activity. And we enjoy that, and we take advantage of it in the ways that we can do lectures in ways that they didn't previously occur, and people can have experiences that they didn't have before. But it also tends to put us into a more passive relationship. So recovering those capacities for concentrated thinking and sustained thought and discussion. And one of the crucial things about the Foundation program is a place of conversation. And one of the things that precisely because we're not dealing with the hot button issue of today, we can talk about things in a way through instances that speak or resonate with that moment, but at the same time, precisely because we're not discussing how one deals with Gaza or the war in Ukraine or the politics of the United States, we can approach those things in a more measured way that allows conversation and insight and shifting of perspectives to occur.
And you see that happen in students?
I absolutely see that happening in students. And students come out finding the experience. The word that gets used constantly is this sense of transformative. Parents will tell us that happened to the young people they have gifted us with. And the young people themselves, the students, will also have expressed this experience, that there's something that shifts in their capacities that awakens reflection and conversation.
Can you give us a sense of how many books and what the breadth is that is contributing to that transformation?
Sure. So I do tell students that if you don't like to read and you don't like to write, you're not going to be happy in the Foundation Year program. So it's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. But we read a fairly substantial amount of texts, and we tend to try and read whole books. So, for instance, last week we went through Homer's Iliad. That's a large work
in 1
of
week.
Poetry we read in 1 week.
Oh.
And this week we are dealing with Plato's Republic, again, a very substantial work of ancient philosophy. And so on and so forth. We go through some wonderful ancient texts, and if anybody wants to find the book list, it's available on the King's website. And anybody that wants to sit in on a lecture, please just let me know, and I'd be happy to try and find a way for that to happen. But the Foundation program, we read these substantial works together. And one of the crucial things is, in some sense, it can seem overwhelming, but we've been doing it for more than 50 years. And what makes it work is that it spills out into the whole life of the students. There's a way in which they become people talk about a cohort, a community, in which they're supporting and sustaining each other and learning through each other, and in doing so, achieving something that they alone might find daunting to think about in themselves. But as I said, we have been doing this for decades, and the students have risen to the challenge and been transformed by it. And to my mind, that's the nature of life. If challenges are both challenges, but they are opportunities for growth and development, and how else are you going to grow and develop except by being spurred by something that is asking something exceptional of you?
Mm-hmm. It's a muscle development kind of thing.
Exactly. If you don't, I was just doing my weightlifting this morning, and if you're not trying to lift heavy weights, you're not going to grow those muscles in any way, shape, or form.
You are listening to This is King's podcast. My guest is Dr. Neil Robertson, the director of the FIP program here at King's. Now, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, and we do hope that you'll follow us and like us wherever you listen. And we drop a new episode every month during the academic year. So, Neil, King's is in some financial difficulties, partly because the provincial government has sort of restricted universities from raising tuition. There's been changes around international students and so on. What does all of this mean for humanities and a program like FIP, do you think?
Well, the danger of a moment like this is that people think that universities need to become focused on a certain kind of job preparation, being job ready.
Engineering
now,
or
law
or plumbing.
Apparently computer science. And yet, what this AI moment has done is to disrupt that model, because it has shown that innovations can occur. So, for instance, if you're doing a computer science degree, in the last 3 or 4 years, you may have had a crisis in your confidence that there is a job waiting for you that you believed was there 3 or 4 years ago. And to my mind, what this is pointing to is precisely where an education like the foundation program could be so helpful. I often say it's preparing you for nothing in particular because it's preparing you for everything.
There was a study that came out of Oxford in 2023 that looked at humanities students and concluded that that they had more resilience in terms of changing workforces and work worlds. You've been at this a long time. What can you say about that?
Well, I just think that's demonstrably true. And one of the easiest ways to see that is to simply look at what our graduates have gone on to do. And it is a whole panoply of ways in which human beings could do wonderful work in the world. So they have been, you might say, obvious things like professors and journalists who come through King's, but they're also involved in computers, in doctors, lawyers, they're filmmakers, artists. There's a whole panoply of different things that people have done. And so that is showing precisely the sense in which you discover inner capacities for development and self-development by doing this kind of degree. So I sometimes use, as this is a bit personal, I suppose, I sometimes use as example my younger brother who did the foundation year program, but then went on and did a course on graphic design at community college and developed those particular skills. And he will say, well, what got him his first job was the work he did after King's, the education he got after King's. But what's allowed him to grow in his positions is that earlier experience of the humanities. It allows him to have capacities for connection and communication, insight, transformation, development, that sense of resilience that you spoke about. That is there operating and, you might say, creating a kind of multiplier effect in relationship to that specialist training.
Mm-hmm. And yet we do live in this time when parents are so concerned about what is the career trajectory for my student, my kid. How do you sort of convince people that there is value in learning about literature and history and social sciences and arts and so on?
So one way I would put this is, okay, what's the motivation going on in the parent when they look at this question? And you might say it's a kind of anxiety, a kind of skepticism or concern, a sense that the world doesn't seem to have a shape that you can make easy sense of and find a way through. And so then we look for paths that will allow us to have some confidence in that. But I would ask you to reflect on that initial anxiety. And what something like the Foundation Year program does is precisely to give you an opportunity to experience and reflect and develop capacities to deal with the underlying anxiety itself. And that's that sense of resilience that you spoke about. Where does resilience come from? It comes from a capacity for a kind of elasticity within our own thinking and our own minds. And that is crucial, I would say, to a parent. Why deal with the symptoms? Deal with the underlying issue. And a humanities education is a way to do precisely that.
Mm-hmm. The province is setting out its priorities for post-secondary education in Nova Scotia, and we know they're focused on this sort of job-ready kind of experience. What do you see that meaning for FYP in terms of communicating, to the public and to government?
So I see a danger here, which is that the foundation year program undoubtedly teaches skills. The skills that are connected to writing well, arguing well, analyzing, interpreting difficult materials, and so on and so forth. And these are real skills, and we work quite hard at having our students develop them. But that's not the reason to do it, in my judgment. Those are the job-ready capacities that people can look at. How can I do well in a law school, or how can I do well in a medical school, and how does that prepare me as a policy analyst if I use those skills in terms of a political science degree or something like that. And I think there's great merit in that, and I don't want to take away from it, but I also think if we present the foundation year program and humanities as a skill development operation, we're actually betraying the deepest gift that it gives, which is this sense of reflection and the power for reflection that those skills open up for us, and that we precisely train people in, which is why those skills are being developed through reading significant and important works of human thought and human culture that ask us to address the deepest questions in our lives. And to my mind, we need to go forward on that foot rather than to fall back and simply try to conform ourselves to the immediate policy demands of the moment. So I see that you could do that given these sort of governmental imperatives, but I would ask the government to reflect on what those imperatives are for. They're for a better life. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And humanities education is, to my mind, the most direct route to thinking about what it means to live a better life.
So FYP has recently celebrated its 50th anniversary. How optimistic are you when you look ahead to the next 50 years?
Well, I'm quite optimistic in the sense that there are going to be all sorts of changes that happen in the world in terms of all the technologies and developments, and this field will shift and that field will shift. But I have a kind of confidence that unless particularly apocalyptic visions come true, we'll still have our humanity. And from that point of view, the foundation year program will still be addressing a basic need that I hope students, as they're emerging from high school, take advantage of and see the worth of. And I can't help but have confidence that that's true because I see it in the students who walk through our doors year after year and give us the gift of their thinking.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you think is important for people to know about FYP?
Okay, so the one thing I probably have done a terrible job of doing thus far, which is to not underline how much fun the foundation year program is. I've spoken about the sense of challenge, but it's also a place where there is real joy and creativity and enjoyment of each other and of the experience of learning together and the playfulness that is all part of that. So, for instance, every year recently we've been having a debate between which involves teams of faculty and students on either side debating completely absurd things, but nonetheless things that resonate with our students. And
For example?
We had a debate about whether the Epic of Gilgamesh contained the most ancient story that we have, whether that story contained everything that's followed subsequently. And I was on Team Gilgamesh, and I'll be very glad to tell you we won.
Okay. Phew. Yeah. So a sense of community, as you kind of mentioned before.
Yeah, so one professor described the foundation program as serious fun. And I think that captures this sense of enjoyment and engagement that are there together at the same time.
I think you need some FIP bumper stickers that say serious fun.
Serious fun, exactly.
Neil, thanks so much for your time.
Great. Well, it's been a real pleasure.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Neil Robertson is a King's alum and the director of the Foundation Year Program for the third time. That's our first episode of This is King's for this new academic year. We're just a little late getting started. If you have thoughts on this episode or anything else you hear, drop us a line to thisiskingspodcast@gmail.com. And while you're at it, consider following us and liking us on Instagram. You can find us at This is King's Podcast there too. If you're a King's alum or student or just interested in campus life, follow us on your streaming platform of choice. Next time on This is King's, we'll meet Fred Valance-Jones, the Director of Journalism Programs at King's, and my boss, so I better be nice. I'm Pauline Dakin. Thanks to co-producer and technician Mark Pinio, and thanks to our new student assistant / associate producer, Sarah Hamilton. It's great to have you on board for this season, Sarah. And of course, thanks to you all for listening.